Hello everyone, my name is Chelsea and welcome back to my channel. For today's video, we're talking about rereading books. So I originally wanted to make this video as sort of just like a sit down, have a conversation type of video, and I think that's mostly what we're going to do today. I have been wanting to reread books. And the thing is, I find it really hard to actually sit down and reread books because of BookTube. Before I started this channel, I think I would reread books quite often. I mean, I don't know for sure, but I've always been one of those people that have wanted to reread books, and some of my favorites I used to reread like every 1 to 2 years, like literally, I think starting around middle school sometime, I would end up with favorite books and reread them all the time. So like, I know for a fact that I read It by Stephen King in 8th grade, and I think that was also maybe the first year I read Lord of the Rings. And after that, like those two books slash series specifically, I would read every year to every other year for years, like until my 20s. And then I just sort of had that die off a little bit, and I haven't ended up rereading books as much. I think part of the problem is that there is this internal pressure for me to want to read new books. And it is internal, it is 100% me, not my viewers, not anything like that. But like, my TBR is constantly growing. There are constantly new books being put out that sound amazing. And so the fact that I do have books that are books that I want to reread, but I've already read them, you know, once before, maybe twice before, it doesn't always feel like that is a priority. Because I know I've tried to reread books on this channel before, and sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't, but I almost feel like I need an excuse to reread books. Like, one of the examples is the Mortal Instruments series, I think 2 years ago? I think it was 2 years ago. In 2020, I did an entire month of rereading the Shadowhunters books. The Mortal Instruments, the Infernal Devices, the Dark Artifices, like everything. And for that series, I don't remember how many books it was. It was over 10,000 pages. And out of all of those books, I think I had only not read 4 or 5 before, because I needed to continue in the Dark Artifices and the Eldest Curses and I think a couple of the short story collections. And so I spent that entire month, first of all, rereading all of the books I had read before, because I had read most of them before, and then adding the new ones on. I really enjoyed doing that because of the fact that like I got to re-experience books that I loved that also went into other series, because that world is huge. But I had to give myself an excuse to do it. I had to be like, okay, this is what I'm doing. I did Shadowhunters September, and I reread all the books I had read before, plus the new ones, but that's all I did for that September of 2020. I read Shadowhunters. And so the fact that I do want to reread some stuff, I, again, feel like I need an excuse to do it. And this is not like a problem with BookTube. It's more of a problem with me, I guess. Just the fact that like, there are so many books out there. But I have favorites that I want to reread that I haven't reread in a while. So I know I've been rambling a little bit. This is just how I am. Welcome to my channel if you haven't been here before. This is what happens when I have these kind of like talky videos. But so ultimately, I wanted to sort of explain myself, talk about rereading. Like, do you guys reread books? Is this a thing? Because again, I feel like I did it more before I was here. Before I felt like I had to put out content. Before I felt like I had too many books that I need to read. I love BookTube, don't get me wrong, I do. But watching BookTube also puts more books on my TBR, so I don't feel like I have as much time to reread favorites. Let me know if you guys do actually find time to read books. Although I do know that there's also people that don't reread books ever. So I'm also curious about that. Are you somebody that doesn't want to go back and relive your favorites? Or just finds it's not the same experience as it was before? But so, all of that short let's make it shorter. I did want to share with you some series and some books and things like that that I do desperately want to reread, maybe the reason why, and we'll just sort of talk about it that way. So I did mention before that obviously I reread all of Shadowhunters in 2020. Another book that I have reread before and talked about on my channel, I think it's been in a couple different tag videos as like a comfort read, and that's going to be Song of the Sparrow by Lisa Ann Sandell. So this is actually a book that I think I got around high school age. When did this come out? That's the thing. 2007. So yeah, I probably got this in my junior year of high school, and I have definitely reread this multiple times because it is so easy to reread. This is one of those ones that I don't feel as guilty about rereading because it is a book told in verse. So literally I can sit down with this book and be done in a couple hours at the most. Like, it's very, very quick to read. This is a sort of like King Arthur, not retelling, but set at that time, but it follows Elaine, who is the Lady of Shalott. So it's like a different character from the King Arthur myths. And yes, I just absolutely love this one. I know it's not like the best. I think I've had a couple people that I'm friends with like actually try this out and read it, and I think they gave it like 4 out of 5 stars because it is good. I have nostalgia for this though, and it is definitely a comfort read. So I rated it 5 out of 5 stars, and I think the last time I reread it was last year, maybe? But yes, this is one that I don't feel guilt about, and I will probably reread again eventually because that is just who I am. But this is definitely one that I have reread before. Another one that I did sort of talk about a little earlier in this video that I do desperately want to reread is The Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien. So I actually put this on a TBR, not this version specifically because I didn't get this version until like last year, I think. This is like a very, very pretty version that has illustrations in it, but I did put Lord of the Rings in general on some sort of TBR either in 2019 or 2020. I think it actually might have been 2019, around the fall time going into winter, like October, November, something like that, because I do feel like these are fallish reads for me personally, and that never happened. Like literally that TBR was like, I want to reread Lord of the Rings, and then it didn't. But like I said before, this is one of those books, or one of the series I should say, that I picked up like 8th grade, 7th or 8th grade, so in middle school sometime, and after I read it, I would reread all 3 books, so not including The Hobbit, but I probably should reread that in this version as well, like almost every single year until I was like in my 20s, and then, you know, I just sort of dropped off with that. And I feel like I did reread them a few years ago, but it has been probably at least 4 or 5 years since I've reread them, and I'm just getting that itch. I got that itch a couple years ago, obviously, and I haven't read them yet. So this is one that I definitely do want to reread. However, because they are so epic and long, I do feel like this might take a little while to reread, and so I just haven't. But like I said, this version is gorgeous. Let me see if I can show you some stuff. So like here is the cover here, and it has illustrations throughout every so often. It's illustrated by Alan Lee, and so yeah, I mean, this is just one of those editions that I had to get, and I think if I'm going to do a rereading version of Lord of the Rings, it'll probably be something like this because it does have the illustrations, and I just really want to see them, and so I feel like that would be a really good way to do it. Reread these with the illustrations. Another one that I've been wanting to reread, and I think I've mentioned it again on my channel in sort of general, is Anne of Green Gables by L.M. Montgomery. Mostly because I have never finished the whole series of this book. So most people read the first book. I actually have like 3 editions of the first book because I absolutely love it. This is another one that I read middle school, maybe early high school, and I just absolutely fell in love with the story. And I read the first 3, I think, books in this series, and then I never continued. But there's like, it's like 7 or 8 books long, and it goes through Anne's like not just childhood but adulthood and her family and all this kind of stuff, and I've been really, really wanting to read those and finish the series, but it has been even longer since I've read Anne of Green Gables than I've read Lord of the Rings. And so I desperately think I need to reread this first one and second and third to get to the rest of the series. But again, it's like an 8-book series. It feels like it's gonna be so long to do that I keep putting it off. And like, I could be that person that's like, I'm gonna read 1 book a month and I'll finish it this year. But I don't know if I'm gonna do that because like, I don't know. I don't know. But yes, I would love to reread Anne of Green Gables so I can continue with the series. Another series that I would like to reread, not because I haven't finished the series, but just because I would like to reread them, is the All for the Game series by Nora Sakavic. So we have The Foxhole Court, The Raven King, and The King's Men. These are dust jackets that were done by LL Starcaster. I'll leave them linked down below, that I purchased off Etsy for this series because they're gorgeous. And the original cover, not the best, mostly because it is like a self-published sort of thing. Hasn't had an updated cover in a while. But this is a series that I absolutely love. I know some people absolutely hate it, but it is a little trashy as a series. But as long as you're not like shitting on the people that read sort of like campy, trashy books, I think we're good. But this is definitely something that I wanted to reread. I'm actually currently in a reading slump right now because I am pregnant. Not only pregnant, but in my 3rd trimester, less than 7 weeks to go until I'm supposed to have this baby. And my 3rd trimester pregnancy brain is hitting hard. And when I say pregnancy brain, yes, you do get those sort of like, I forget what I'm talking about, or like the specific term that I'm trying to discuss. Like I couldn't remember, I think preeclampsia the other day when I was talking to my husband about like certain things that they check you for at doctor's appointments for your pregnancy. Like I could not think of the actual term for it. But I'm also just unmotivated. I haven't been sleeping as well. I've been getting up to pee more in the middle of the night. And when my brain is not in it, it's not in it. I cannot physically read stuff or audio or ebook sometimes if I'm not in it, if my brain's not in it. And so I've been slumping hard so far. In May, it caught up to me faster than I thought it was going to. And so because of that, I've been wanting to reread these because I have read these a couple times. I've actually allowed myself to reread these once or twice since I had originally read them, and I absolutely love them. They are very, very dark. They are not necessarily grounded in reality. There is some slurs and homophobia and like really, really dark stuff in here because it does have to deal with a little bit of like mafia stuff, suspension of reality. There is also a sport in here because I think the last time I talked about these, whenever it was, I forgot to mention there's a sport, but it's not a real sport. So again, suspension of reality for that. I'm not a big sports person, so like I'm good with whatever. And there is slight romance stuff at the second half of the second book and in the third one, but this is in no way a romance series. It is new adult because the kids are in college. And again, I just absolutely love this. It's very character driven, but also very, very dark. And so because of that, I think because it is sort of like a guilty pleasure, although like I'm not ever guilty about what I'm reading, like I'm just gonna read it. It is sort of like guilty pleasure type of stuff. It is very quick to devour these books, and I love that. And so the fact that I have been in a sort of reading slump has been making me want to reread these. So don't be surprised if these somehow end up on my wrap up for the month. The next series I wanted to reread is the Miriam Black series by Chuck Wendig. I have the first 3 books here. These are the original mass markets, which are flippin' gorgeous. Like I can't believe they stopped printing these to do a different format. Like they did hardcovers, and I think probably trade paperbacks as well, but like different covers that are just not as cool as these. Like I loved all the imagery that you can see, like the lighthouse and an eyeball, and there's like a hand somewhere too. Like I love the imagery of these. But there is 6 total books in this series, and I've only read the first 3 because I think they stopped at 3 for a little while, and then that is when they decided to like rebrand the books. I own all 6. in the hardcovers, because like obviously, but I haven't read these ones in a while. I don't think I've ever reread this series. I think I just read like book 1, book 2, book 3, and then it took me a while to get the last 3, and so I need to reread these. These are books following Miriam Black, who's our main character, who can like, I guess if like she touches you, she can see how you die. And at least in the first book, because I don't have a full memory of everything, she wants to try to stop the death of one of the guys that she sees here. And I know she's tried to do this in the past and it hasn't worked, but she has decided that she is going to try again. She's going to try to save him from the death that she sees. She is very crass, but I sort of love that about her, because she is a sort of like badass heroine, but not in the traditional badass sense. Like, she is just sort of doing what she needs to do to survive. She's very crass, and I remember loving these so much, but I do feel like I need to reread them to finish the series, and I haven't. So yeah. And then the last one I had here is one that I actually just read a couple months ago, March I think it was, and that's Winter's Orbit by Everina Maxwell. This is one that I wanted to mention here because like as soon as I finished it, I wanted to reread it. Like literally as soon as I finished it, I wanted to reread it. I couldn't reread it at that time because I had other books that I needed to finish for my TBR that month. But so far, this is still my favorite book of 2022. Like, this is my top book of the year so far. And I just know that this is one that I want to reread. Who knows when that is going to happen because of the fact that like I have an issue with rereading books because of BookTube. I talked about that. This is the whole point of this video. But this is something I desperately do want to reread. It might not happen this year because I don't think I've ever actually like reread a book twice in a year in a few years. Maybe like at the very beginning of my BookTube journey. But I desperately want to reread this one. It is sci-fi, it is romance, it has a mystery, like everything was just so well crafted. It is also like character driven as well as like the mystery plot driven sort of stuff. Like I just absolutely fell in love with this book so quickly, and yeah, I do want to reread this. Who knows when it's gonna happen, but this is the last one I wanted to talk about today. Speaking of rereading books, if you watch my TBR videos, one of the books that you guys got to sort of like vote on for me to read this month was a third book in a series where I wanted to reread the first 2 books. And part of the reason I did that is because I want to try to reread some of these books and some of these series that like I maybe didn't finish the series before, or I just want to like continue with that kind of stuff. And I think also in my TBR game, one of the green cards that I have is to reread a book. So like I'm trying to give myself a little bit more leeway with that. I'm trying to include it in the things that I do on BookTube so that I am able to actually reread things that I want to reread. However, because I am in a reading slump, I think I've gotten halfway through book 1 and it is currently halfway through May. So I don't even know if that is going to happen this month. Even though I set myself up for success to reread books, I don't know if it's gonna happen. We'll have to see. But yeah, again, like I said, let me know if you do like to reread books down below, or if it's something that you just think you are unable to do, because I'm very curious and fascinated about that, because I am somebody who loves to reread books and I just haven't been doing it as much because I have been putting pressure on myself to do other things. But yeah, I think that's gonna be it for today. Hopefully this wasn't too rambly. I do feel like I ramble a lot. But if you guys like this video, give it a thumbs up to let me know. Subscribe to this channel if you'd like to see more videos. I do have videos up usually on Tuesdays and Thursdays, but because I'm going into the end stages of pregnancy right now, I'm only gonna be posting 1 video a week for the next couple months on Thursdays. So I will only see you guys on Thursdays for a little while, but you will have videos up every week, and I will see you then. Bye.